story of Moses and the life of Moses. If you remember last week, we left off where God had given Moses an aid with his brother Aaron, and they came to Pharaoh for the first time. They let Pharaoh know that he needed to let the people go to be able to go out and to make sacrifices and worship God. And that's kind of where we left off last week. And this morning we're going to tackle the idea and the concept of what it is to have a hardened heart. As I've read the scripture and as I've studied Moses over the years, as I was younger, I was always bothered by the idea that God would intentionally do something so cruel as to take somebody's heart and to harden it. Our God, who is a loving and cherishing God, our God who wants only the best for everyone, who wants to give everyone the opportunity to do right, how is it possible that a God like that would intentionally cause pain to so many? How is it that God would take and make a leader change his entire heart and who he is and to harden his heart? And it bothered me for the longest time until I really got into what is going on as we look today in our series with Moses. As we go into the time now where Moses begins to show the power of God. If you remember last week as we left off, Moses and Aaron had went into the leaders and they talked to the leaders and they showed them the different signs that God had given them to show the power that they were from God. The leaders were excited and they said, sure, go represent us to Moses. And Moses goes to Pharaoh, and Moses goes into Pharaoh and he talks to them, and Aaron shows, they say what the need is, and Pharaoh dismisses them. And along with dismissing him, Pharaoh calls in his authorities and says, now we're going to take away the straw for them to make bricks. These lazy, wicked people, they just feel like they don't have enough to do. They want time off, let's work them even harder. And now all of a sudden, as this happens, the leaders of the Israelites come back and say, may God judge you, Moses, by what you've done to us. You've made our life even more difficult. We've taken a beating because of you, and we're not happy with the situation. And it leads us to where we are today with Moses and with Aaron as they go in now to speak with Pharaoh. And this morning we're going to run through the plagues. And I want to point out some things to you in the scriptures with each one as you can start to see how a hardening of a heart can happen. You know, I have somebody took my stuff. There it is. Good. Okay. I have a couple illustrations going to help you out with a little bit with the idea of a heart. My sister is a Scentsy consultant. Now, the ladies probably know what that is. The guys don't know what that is. It's the wax that smells really good. They put those really pretty things around your house. And so she hooks me up, man. Anything that I want and more, whenever I start to run low, bulbs, whatever, I just kind of let her know. And next time she comes up, she'll just bring me back all stuff. And so when you come to my office, a lot of times it kind of has a nice fragrance to it or whatnot. I ask her to make sure she gets me some somewhat manly scents and whatnot. The spring flowers just kind of don't cut it for me, but I do like the apple cinnamons, the leather, and things like that. It's kind of cool. So I really like these things, and they're really kind of neat because it's just a scented wax. It's a scented wax. It's not a wax that really burns. It's just a scented wax, and the way that it works is you put it into what they call a warmer, and the warmer will put just enough heat on this wax to where it will melt. And as it melts, it lets the aroma out. What I really like about these having small children is that this wax does not get hot enough to hurt somebody. It's just warm enough to be melting. And whenever it gets done and it cools back off, it reshapes itself and it's solid again. And I also have a main common tool that we have in our children's ministry, Play-Doh. This too, in its form, whenever it's, right now if I can get it out, one-handed today. Come on, there it is. All right. No, this too has its ability. It is clay. And it is movable, and it is shapeable, and it can be brought into a design. The difference between the two of these is the wax. Whenever you put heat to it, it gets more pliable, and can be moved and can be shaped. Whereas this Play-Doh, if I put heat to it, it gets hard. Really hard. And if I put enough heat to it, it will crack. And it will break. And I think this, as we look into the scriptures today, is the difference between a heart for God and a heart not for God. So as we go into the scriptures, I want to kind of walk through the plagues with you. As we start out, the very first one is the plague of blood. It's very interesting how it kind of starts out. They go through, and Moses and Aaron come together, and God tells them what to do, and they're going to turn the Nile into blood. And so, as they start to do this, this happens in front of Pharaoh, and for most of us, we would be very impressed with this. Pharaoh, however, has magicians as well. And when Aaron changes things, so do the magicians, and they say, see, we have this power too. And after you look at the scriptures, it says this, but the Egyptian magicians did the same thing by their secret arts, and Pharaoh's heart became hard. He would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. Instead, he turned and went to his palace and did not even take this to heart. Moses and Aaron came through and they said, let our people go. You need to let our people go. We need to be able to go worship our God. Give us some time to go outside of the boundaries, go out to the wilderness. Let us take our wildlife, let's take our animals, our children, our women, let us worship God. And he says, and they said, if not, look what God will do. His magicians say, yeah, really, watch this. Me too. And the beginning of Pharaoh's heart hardening begins. God turns the heat up just a little bit on Pharaoh's heart. And as Pharaoh sees his magicians doing things, he's not that impressed. So what? You think I'm going to fall for that? Remember his phrase the week before? He considers himself to be a god. I don't know your God. He knows Ra is a god, but he doesn't know Israel's God. What's he done for them over the last 400 years? Absolutely nothing. So God turns it up another level. The plague of the frogs. And this one's so fun to me because I love that they say, here comes the frogs. God sends out the frogs, and magicians go, yeah, well, watch this, we can make frogs too. Boop. Okay. All right. Verse 15. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. See, what had happened was Aaron made frogs, the magicians made frogs, and there were a lot of frogs. There were a lot of frogs. There are frogs everywhere. As a matter of fact, magicians did such a good job, they made extra frogs. And there was no relief. And Pharaoh came to Moses and said, pray for relief. Get rid of these frogs for us. I need your help. What I love as we look through the scriptures today, as you look through the plagues, time and time again, Pharaoh will ask for Moses to go before God for help. Every time Moses goes before God for help, he grants Pharaoh's request. And when he does, Pharaoh sees that everything's okay. What's his action? But they're all dead. All right, awesome. Yeah, you're not going anywhere. No, thank you. Thanks for playing my game. It's not really that big of a deal. They probably would have died anyway. And his heart begins to get a little crustier. Now, if you notice there, who hardened Pharaoh's heart there? Pharaoh did. So many times we look at the scriptures later on and we think, well, God just hardened that heart. That heart didn't begin hardening by God. That heart began to harden by the way that Pharaoh was. His heart began to get crusty because he didn't want to acknowledge who God was. His heart got a little bit harder whenever he cried out to God for help and he got it, and he thought, well, it's not really that big of a deal. That's when his heart starts getting harder. Because the thing that his heart is made up of is wrong. His heart's all about himself. It's not about God. There's no pliability inside of that. It's fine as long as everything goes well. But when you put the heat on that, it's going to get hard. So they go on to the gnats. And Pharaoh is born. And yet it goes on. Aaron takes and throws up the dust. And the magicians try to do the same thing. See, can you see we're kicking it up a notch every time the heat gets a little hotter? Magicians, yeah, we can make blood. We can make frogs. We can't make them go away, but we can make frogs. Here's dust. Here's gnats. Here's dust. Here's dust. Here's dust. Here's dust. Okay, we can't do that one. We can't do that one. As a matter of fact, when they can't do it, the response to them, as I say to Pharaoh, is, this is the finger of God. Pharaoh, be warned, this is God in action. We're telling you, this is bigger than us, Pharaoh. This is God. But when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not. Since the gnats were on people and animals everywhere, the magicians said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not listen, just as the Lord said. Again, as things got worse, his actions before have made it worse. His heart has already started to form a hard, crusty shell. By his attitude at the beginning, by his actions as they went on, it is getting harder and harder. And now his heart won't even allow him to listen to the reasoning of the people that he has trusted the entire time. These magicians, these sorcerers, these ones who have had this incredible power that he's been in awe of, that he totally trusts on, they themselves come to him and say, Pharaoh, this is legit. You need to be aware. There is a God. This is real. We need to deal with this. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he just wouldn't listen. And when relief comes, the flies come next. But this time, God shows incredible power, says, oh, there's going to be flies, but they won't go in Goshen where the Israelites will. Where are they? They're just on you. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've been out in the summertime, flies don't really have territories that they stay in, do they? They're pretty much, if there's something good, they're going to go get it. If there's something gross, they're going to go get that too. Flies are everywhere. Once they're there, you don't have like a protective barrier. We like to fool ourselves with little fly traps and things like that, but they go where they want to go. You know, we take the whole penny in a bag, hanging it over the door with water and stuff. We've tried it all because they're irritating. But can you imagine swarms and swarms of these things? And the magicians and all the Egyptians, they're everywhere. They're irritating. They're nipping. They're biting. And the Israelites sitting back home are fly-free and relaxed. Then Moses left Pharaoh, because Pharaoh again asked Moses, pray for me. Pray for my people. Pray for this to go away. Then Moses left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord. And the Lord did what Moses asked. The flies left Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Not a fly remained. The incredible power of God being shown over and over again. Not only does he have the ability to bring things in that will bring you to your knees, but he has the ability that in an instant can bring relief. And again, God is showing who he is through his actions. But this time also, Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not let the people go. His pride has gotten so strong and so big. The idea that there could be something bigger than him, the idea that somebody or something could push him around, he wasn't having it. He was not going to be the leader that gave in to these people. He was not going to show weakness in the midst of struggles. One-on-one, sure, he's going to ask Moses for those prayers for those things to be gone, but he sure wasn't going to cow down to him. If he does that, what are they going to ask for next? What's going to happen next? Remember, the big fear is these people can revolt against us. They can take everything from us. I'm protecting my wealth. I'm protecting my dynasty. And that is so much more important than anything else. And that heart is harder and harder and harder. So God calls again another plague, and this time to show the incredible power of God. There's a plague on all the livestock of Egypt, the cattle, the camels, the sheep, all the livestock. But not a single piece of livestock the Israelites would be harmed. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one animal belonging to Israel died. I want you to think about that. The entire nation, every camel, goat, cow, horse, everything that pulled those chariots, they're gone. Boom. They are gone. Yet his heart was unyielding, and he would not let the people go. What has happened so far as we've gone through all these plagues is not once has God hardened his heart. Pharaoh has done this to himself. Pharaoh has made his choices and is living with his choices and letting everyone go through those choices. And right now, it is inconvenient for him. Yes, the gnats were irritable. Yes, the flies were irritating. And the blood, yes, we had to dig up different water. And the flies, yes. And as we go through, and the livestock, man, I feel really bad for those other people that lost their stuff. But guess what? I'm still Pharaoh. And if I want a cow, I'll just go to the Israelites and take it from them. So what? Yes, it's hurt some people, but it's not hurting me. And I'm Pharaoh. And his heart has become so hard that he does not care about his own people. He just cares about himself. So God moves on to the boils. And this time, the boils are so bad when they're done to all the Egyptian people and the magicians. The magicians can't even stand before Moses because of their uncleanliness and how bad they are. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils that were on them and all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And he would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said to Moses. And for the first time, we hear that phrase. My challenge to you is this. And you'll see it in just a minute. Did God take this heart, this clay Pharaoh heart, that was already drying out, that was already getting hard and crusty, something he's already done to himself over and over again. Did God literally harden Pharaoh's heart? Or was it possibly his insane resentment towards what God was doing and God's actions that was hardening his heart? This is the thing we have to answer in just a minute, and I'll show you why. As we go through the plagues of the hail, at this point, God calls for the hail to come down, and it starts destroying everything. But watch the difference here. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron. This time I have sinned. This is the first time that Pharaoh acknowledges he has done something wrong. This hard, crusty heart, it's breaking a little bit right here. I have sinned. He said to them, let the Lord in his right, the Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Pray the Lord, for we've had enough thunder and hail. I will let you go. You do not have to stay any longer. He says, I am wrong. This is going to come into play in just a minute. Here's Moses' response back. I'll pray for you, but I know that you and your officials still do not fear the Lord God. He says, we've done wrong. We've sinned. I'll use your terms. We have messed up. We have sinned. And Moses comes back and goes, yes, I will pray for you. I will pray for this to stop. But I know you, Pharaoh. You still don't fear God. Pharaoh, you still don't get it. When Pharaoh saw the rain and the hail and the thunder had stopped, he sinned again. He and his officials hardened their hearts. So Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not let the Israelites go, just as the Lord had said through Moses. Now this is what kind of catches me, where I have to really think about. And I want to challenge you guys. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. When Pharaoh's heart becomes hardened, Pharaoh sins. If God literally hardens Pharaoh's heart, is God pushing Pharaoh? Is God making Pharaoh sin? And can God do that? Would our God do that? Would God make me sin? That's not who our God is. Our God is a good God. Our God does not do things like that. So if God cannot and will not make me sin, I have a choice to sin, then when I read the scripture and it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, then maybe what is happening is that Pharaoh himself has set himself into motion to hardening, and it's the action that God is doing, the things that God is making have happen, that are triggering Pharaoh. Because what Pharaoh's already set himself out to be. Because Pharaoh had the choice. He could have been pliable. He could have accepted who God was. It was only a few generations before that his predecessors, hundreds of years ago, knew who God was. It was that God who saved Egypt. It was that God that sent Joseph to them to save their people. It was that God that gave them the wealth that they have through his prophet, through his man, through Joseph. And yet time has come where they no longer remember that, and they no longer acknowledge that. And they've chosen to not go with the way of God. They've chosen to go a different way. And they've changed the dynamic of their heart. So now when pressure is put on it, when heat is put on that heart, it is getting harder and harder and harder. And when other things happen, that's one thing to make it hard. But when it happens to me personally, and I don't have a relationship with God, I begin to resent God. And all too many times we see this in our world today. All too many times we see people going through struggles who do not have a relationship with God, that want to call on God at the last minute as a last resort. And when things don't go the way that they want them to go, they are frustrated and angry with God. They don't want to acknowledge who God is. They want to shut that off. They don't want to believe. No matter what God has done for them, they have a hardened heart towards God. And it is not God who has hardened their heart. It is their actions that have put it into that situation that they're in. But we have a choice of what we want to have done with our heart. It is how we decide to build our heart and how we use our heart that makes us either clay or a wax. Are we going to be the people that when we go through struggles and hardships, that as the pressure's put on, that we melt and we let God form us into what we need to be, and we trust in Him that He's going to form us and shape us into what we need to be and protect our heart? Or are we going to be the ones that try to become like a rock and do it on our own? Because when we try to become like clay and like a rock, this hard surface, then we're going to have problems. Because the pressure's going to keep on coming, and He's still going to keep on coming. And if we cannot bend and be shaped by God, then we will break. Just like Pharaoh is about to break. So God goes on, and He sends another plague of the locusts. And it goes through, the scriptures say this: Moses then left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord. And the Lord changed the wind to a very strong west wind, which caught up the locusts and carried them into the Red Sea. Not a locust was left anywhere in Egypt. And I love this because if you look at the progression of what's happened is God started off so small and inconvenient. Your water is not good. You have animals or frogs you don't like having around. There's an irritation with things around you. Now I'm going to take a little more. And it's going to be worse. And the hail's going to come down and I'm going to knock down your fields and your way of eating. And now once they're down, you're not even going to be able to harvest them because now I'm going to send something that's going to eat up everything. I'm going to strip you away from everything that you have because you will either follow me and acknowledge me, or you will pay the price for not being a part of me. Because I am the God of this world. And I choose how things are going to go. Not a locust was left anywhere in Egypt, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And at this point, Pharaoh looks at it and he's lost everything. He's practically lost everything. And he would not let the Israelites go. And through the midst of this, Pharaoh does other things as well. He tries to compromise with Moses. You can go worship and stay close by. You can go worship, but leave your women and children. You can go worship, but leave your livestock here. Again and again, Pharaoh says, you can have your faith as long as it's on my terms. But that's not the way our God works. Our God doesn't call us to be Christians of faith and do it in the way that the world cries is acceptable. On the world's terms. God says it's on my terms. I've laid out what I want for you to do, and I need you to do what I've asked for you to do. So darkness comes, this time without warning. There's no pre-talking to Pharaoh on it, it just happens. And for 3 days, it's black in Egypt. And it's light for the people of Israel. I can only imagine what that looked like, right? Can you imagine where that's at, where it's pitch black, and you step over, and it's light, and you step over, and it's light. And you step over, and it's light. You step in the middle, you're like, see, don't see, see, don't see. Can you imagine what that would have been like? as they're trying to fumble around and figure this out. For 3 days they go through this. And this is what happens. See, Pharaoh goes and he says to them, go, worship even with women and children, just leave your livestock. You can go. And Moses comes back and says, I can't do that. God calls for us to worship Him in this way. I need that livestock because we're going to make sacrifices. I'm trying to do what God asked me to do. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And he was not willing to let them go. And this is after Moses prays and the light comes back. Pharaoh says to Moses, get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die. Moses' response is this, just as you say, I will never appear before you again. Okay. Okay. And as we start looking through these, we hit a really hard point here with Pharaoh. He has this incredibly hardened heart. He can't see anything but himself. He has a frustration and an irritation, and he's trapped inside of who he is. He is the Pharaoh over all the people that have no livestock, that have no food for the future, that have all these complications, that have been put through the ringer. And he is so mad, and he's so irritated that the idea that there's this God, and that he is calling for something else, and that he does not control what God wants. And so many times we want to control how God works in our lives. But that's not the way that it works. And because of his frustration and the lack of control, just the idea that he would have to surrender to something other than himself, his frustration gets so high that he says, I'm done with you. Don't look at me again. Don't see me again. When we flip back to the plague of hail, and in the time of the locusts, there's a phrase that really caught me as you read back in there, where God literally says, I could have wiped you out a long time ago. I had the power to send down a plague on you and wipe you out from the very beginning. But I have not done it because you will be the example to the entire world that they will see my power and my ability of what I can do. And it will be done to you so that the world will know that I am God. Because of your hardened heart, you will suffer like none other. And as we hit the last plague, we go to the firstborn. And we know that this one is the most dramatic of all. The others have been inconvenient. They've caused a lot of upheaval. But this one is by far more brutal than all the rest. As God calls to Moses and he says, this is what's going to happen. The firstborn of every family are going to die. The firstborn male is gone. And here's how you're going to protect yourself. And when I do this, he will let you go. And he does. Because his son dies. And before the night is even over, after his son's died, he calls Moses in and he says, go, leave. Take whatever you want, just please go. Because this heart of this strong and powerful man who thought he could do it on his own had gotten so much heat and taken so much and has gotten so hard that it literally got to the point where it broke. It just crumbled. There's nothing left to it. If you've ever done pottery, I did pottery in art class in college. If you fired the kiln too hot too fast, with clay, it cracks and breaks. And the heat was turned up on Pharaoh's heart to the point where it just broke. What's the difference in Pharaoh and David? David does wrong. Sorry, Solomon. No, David said. Lose my mind here. Does wrong. Loses a son. Has a relationship with God that's incredible afterwards. Pharaoh does wrong. Loses a son. Wipes out his entire country. What's the difference? A heart for God. A heart for self.
No.
This is the question for you today.
No.
What are you filling your heart with?
No.
What does your heart look like?
No.
Have you guarded your heart? Have you tried to keep it walled off? Have you been trying to make it hard and solid and you think that you've got control of it? Or have you surrendered your heart to God and said, God, it is yours. I am yours completely. My heart, my soul, my mind, all that I am. And I will let you control this.
No.
And right now it looks rock solid. And it's in good shape. But I know there's going to be times whenever life's going to get tough. The heat's going to be on. And God, I just trust you that because I've given you my heart, you've molded it into this wax form that when it does and it melts, that you're going to catch it. You're going to protect it. You're going to reform it. And you're going to make it strong again. Because, God, I know that you are the God that can do that. And I know that I can't do that on my own. Because whenever I try to do things by myself, I just get harder and harder and harder. And God, I just don't want to break. Is that you today? Is that who we are? If your heart feels like it's starting to get callous and it's starting to harden, you don't want that. Let's address that. The thing that Pharaoh totally messed up on was he acknowledged that he had sinned and he'd done wrong. But as soon as things started to go differently, he changed back the way he always was. He never really made a commitment to God. It's when we make that commitment to God that the very inner being of our hearts change. Because our heart goes from being just our own heart to a heart that has Christ inside of it. That has the Holy Spirit dwelling inside of us. That changes the very beginning and very being of who we are. And that's what we need. That's what we want. And that's what God offers. If we can help you with your needs, with your heart, whatever that may be, let us know as we stand, as we sing.